Welcome back. Let's turn our attention now to the agri-chemicals and fertilizer space. Ranjit Cirumalla, Vice President Research at IIFL, tracking the sector very closely, is now joining in. Ranjit, before we get chatting about the outlook for second half for the agri sector, let's quickly recap Q2. You've titled your Q2 review note as Headwinds at Home, Tailwinds Abroad. Basically, domestic has been subdued while exports have held up well, and that is the defining theme of Q2. Can you quickly recap how the individual sub-segments have fared and what the trends were?
Right, thank you. So if you look at the start of the year, we were expecting gradual recovery to pan out. But as the year progresses, we all are aware that what transpired during the year, the primary would have been the tariffs that were never anticipated. We started off with 15%, inched up to 20%, and there are 50% tariffs that we are seeing on the exports front. On the domestic fronts, the monsoons were a bit early this year, at least in the month of May is what we have seen. And this year what we had is almost 6 months of rains. So 1Q, we have seen a very strong pickup in the agro-chemicals sales. But as we headed into September, the excessive rains did impact the consumption, and that's where we saw 2Q results waning off. While on the export front, if you see, there were pockets of outperformance. Refrigerant pack, all the companies that have an exposure to refrigerants have done very well. But at the same time, what we also see, the worst of destocking cycle is very well behind us. Most of the global agrochemical companies have started delivering the volume growth, and that is where we see the companies did benefit from that volume growth. As regards to pricing, we still see that it is continue to remain in a negative zone, and that is what would be the key trigger to watch out for. Though we have seen a bit of an uptick over the last couple of weeks or a month or so, some agrochemicals prices did inch up. But at the aggregate level, we still see that in a negative zone.
Sorry to cut you in, Ranjit. So based on what you said, does the second half, do you anticipate a rebound for these agrochemical companies? And if they do, would that be enough to offset the subdued performance in the first half?
See that if you split that into two parts, the domestic kharif is almost 65-70% of the consumption, and that is being done with. So Rabi, even though we do expect, but that won't be suffice to kind of take care of the full year. And this is for the domestic agrochemical companies. We will have to look forward to the next year, the cropping season. As far as the exports are concerned, second half is very heavy. We do see a strong pickup in the LATAM and the North American markets. And that is where the key would be. The companies that have an exposure to the North American and LATAM markets, the second half should be much better than the first half.
The real impact on stocks on account of the US tariffs?
There are quite a few. As I said, some companies were able to mitigate that and have taken a bit of a hit on the profitability. But there are also companies which have kind of a rerouting their exports. So all we know that Aarti has an higher exposure to the US markets, but their energy segments did very well in 2Q, and that's why they were able to set off that particular thing. What we also see that the dumping into India is also kind of a picked up. So all these geopolitical tensions and tariffs have kind of altered the global trade flows. What we see is that there is a dumping happening from China into Brazil, dumping happening from the Chinese goods into India. And the companies that are competing with these goods will see their profitability coming under pressure. Nevertheless, what we also see, the outsourcing theme is intact. The companies that are able to kind of get a newer molecules, are able to push through or able to win new contracts have done very well and are expected to do well.
All right, Ranjit, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining in here. On that note, we're also going to wrap up this edition of Trading Hour. Thanks very much for tuning in. Stay with us. Halftime Report will take all the action forward.